Hi everyone, welcome to Inside Japan number 2, very second episode. Today I'm Adam Kassab from GLOBIS, and today delighted to have with us a visitor who's here from the UK, Pauline Chakmakjian, who is also a trustee of the Japan Society in the United Kingdom. Welcome to GLOBIS, Pauline. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me, Adam.
Thank you. Just to get started, maybe you could give our viewers an idea of what's your connection with Japan? What brings you to Japan this time?
Oh, well, that's very easy to answer because I try to visit Japan once or twice every year for a couple of months or so. It changes every year, but I like to come here. It's like another home for me, and I do love the atmosphere, especially in Kyoto during the spring and the autumn in this country. It's very, very beautiful here.
Okay, so this time, I think you said earlier you've been in Kyoto for the last few weeks.
Yes.
And what were you doing in Kyoto?
Well, I like visiting Kyoto basically to relax. It has a beautiful ambiance, and the sakura this year wasn't as great as it has been in former years because it was a little bit cooler, but still always very beautiful there. Certain walks that are famous, like the Tetsugaku no Michi, which is very popular to do, which has very, very beautiful, beautiful cherry trees there. So I enjoy that kind of atmosphere.
Wow, fantastic. So the very first time you came to Japan, when was that?
It was in May 2005.
2005, and you've been kind of back and forth?
Yes, that's correct.
Through those years, has anything sort of surprised you about sort of Japanese people, the mentality, or the way people think and work, or anything?
I can't say that anything surprises me about Japan. Because every culture, every country has its own way of doing things. So it's not really a surprise. You just make a note of the difference and accept it. You go in with an open mind in every country and you'll be fine. The thing that surprises me about Japan is that more foreigners do not engage with this country. Number one, it's very, very beautiful if you just want to go on a holiday. And the other reasons, if you take it a step further besides just being a visitor, such as in any professional field, is that I think it's very fulfilling to work here once you know the steps you have to take in the dance. But I'm very, very surprised when people tell me that they've never been to Japan, because I think once in your life before you die, you should visit this country. It's one of the most beautiful countries in the world. And I've stopped myself from going to other places because I always want to come back here every year. So, yeah.
Fantastic, thanks. Can you give our viewers a bit of an idea about your research? 'Cause I know you kind of go around the world lecturing on various subjects, but can you give our viewers an idea about what your kind of area that you focus on?
Yes, thank you for asking me. My main area of research and lecturing is on Freemasonry, which is a rather unusual subject, very obscure subject. But believe it or not, it does exist in Japan, as it does in many different countries throughout the world. And my specialization is actually Freemasonry in Japan because I was invited initially by Freemasons under the Grand Lodge of Japan to visit the headquarters in Tokyo, which is located next to Tokyo Tower. So I had an opportunity to interview members of Freemasonry in Japan, past and present Grand Officers, and also the charitable branch, the Zaidan Hojin, which is Tokyo Masonic Association, and to get a little bit of a feel for their charitable activities, which was rather interesting. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Spooky. Is it?
No, it's not spooky. Once you understand what Freemasonry is, it's fine. I just gave a talk for the America-Japan Society a few days ago, and people really understood what it was after a lecture is given on the subject, and it's nothing dangerous.
Okay.
No.
Have you noticed any difference, say, the Japan Lodge compared to Lodge in the UK? Are there sort of any cultural differences that come out, or?
Well, there are probably cultural differences based on the fact that one group is Japanese and the other is British, but these two Grand Lodges are actually what we call in amity with one another, meaning that Grand Lodge in England, the United Grand Lodge of England, recognizes the Grand Lodge of Japan because Japan uses England as its model, so they agree on the principle or core nature of Freemasonry,
I see.
the same principles. So they are allowed to visit one another. And some of the lodges also operate under the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts, which is American, in Japan. So it's kind of a mixture of different kinds of Freemasonry. But there are a lot of Americans involved in Freemasonry in Japan as well, so we can't forget the Americans.
Oh, that's
so there's that
interesting.
influence as well. So I haven't really engaged with them for a couple of years now, because my main intent was to get an idea of what their charitable activities were, which is what I did.
Okay.
And that's fascinating.
And how did you develop your interest in the first place in Freemasonry?
I'm particularly fascinated by salon culture, which you largely find in the Enlightenment project in 18th century Europe, in countries like England and France. This is when feudalism started to die out and you have the rise of the middle classes, where people are more and more getting into circles with one another and discussing art, politics, history, religion, just circles of meeting, societies. And you still have that in England today. There's a society for everything, which is great. So if you want to hear a lecture on a particular aspect of a country's history or a particular kind of behavior or art, then there's always something. And that all emerged, really mushroomed in the 18th century. So it's an exciting time. And Freemasonry came from that tradition. People think it's the other way around, but it's actually, Freemasonry came from those growing, emerging societies.
Fantastic.
So that's what I find fascinating.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Interesting. And I think you're American, your background, American?
Yes, I was born in America,
Born in
yes,
America.
in California.
Would you, could you sort of compare, differences or similarities between, say, the American sort of way, British way, and maybe Japanese way? Anything that sort of strikes you as kind of, if you compare them together?
Yes, of course. I'll be honest with you. I actually don't think people should be stereotyped according to what passport they hold. Yes, it's true the Americans have a certain way of doing things that's generally speaking true, such as the directness in manner, the quickness in decision making, the least possible amount of time wasted, which is great. Much like the Scandinavians, the Nordics do this as well. Then they're very easy to work with. Whereas the British and the Japanese have that element in common where they do like to take their time in considering matters, and there is an element of ritual in their behavior, which is interesting. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just different. However, I have a system. For projects or ideas that I want to go ahead with and I want accomplished without wasting time, I will have a tendency to go to an American or Scandinavian. Whereas if I have a project that's not so important that I can waste that time, which can be very pleasant, doing the dinners and those kinds of things, then I will look to the British or the Japanese. But it's all a matter of time. It's all a matter of time, and I'm very patient. I'm not in a hurry. So you just have to play along with whatever the game is in each country, and you'll be fine.
Next question is about something you love and something you hate about Japan. So maybe time wasting is something you hate, or would you prefer it to
No. I actually don't mind wasting my time, because that can be very pleasant.
Right.
That can be very relaxing. There's nothing wrong with that.
Something that drives you mad when you're here.
Yes, I'll tell you. There is something that drives me mad. First of all, we'll do the love part. Apart from the cliches that everybody loves about Japan, such as the clean environments, there's little or no dirt, or uncleanliness in the streets, things of that nature. The trains run to the second. People come early to meetings slightly out of respect and courtesy, which is lacking in other countries. And also the normal enjoyments, such as the beauty of the country, the food, the people's courtesy. I have an artistic reason, and it might seem unusual, but the rabbit, or the image of the bunny rabbit, is decorated and used a lot, the different positions of this creature. And I think it's because Japanese find it very cute. And also there are a lot of rabbits in its folklore and things of that nature. But it's an unusual response, I know, but it's one of the things I love about it. and you won't get that answer from a lot of people, I'm sure.
Rabbit. Mm.
So, and I'm Usagi Doshi as well. So and the thing I hate about Japan, probably, there's very little to hate about this country. But to be honest, I find it annoying when certain Japanese, it's a small number of them, and they're normally found in Tokyo. I don't encounter this problem in Kyoto, because I think Kyotoites know who they are. They come from old families and certain traditions, so they don't have an sort of identity crisis. There are some people I've encountered in Tokyo that say that the Japanese are special, that there's some sort of pure race, that you don't understand the Japanese. I think that's all nonsense. I think individuals are special. Like Alexander the Great is special, or Hideyoshi is special. I don't think the Japanese have a special brain or something like this. It's who you meet and who you get along with. And sometimes Japanese are not Japanese in their traditional approach. That's who that person is. They're very much their own personality or character. And it doesn't matter what country they were born in or what passport they hold. It's not important.
I mean, one of the questions I like to ask Japanese people is, what do you think is special about Japan and Japanese, yourself? And they quite often they say, about the kind of Kaizen mentality, about always improving something, and also their love of nature. They seem to think they have a kind of very unique kind of bond with nature. You wouldn't go along with that? Or?
I agree with that, because there's a famous saying that China is for thinkers and Japan is for sensualists, which I think is true. Because Japanese people, my impression out of reading commentaries about them from outsiders as well as observing them myself, is that they're probably not as intellectual a nationality as others are. And that's not a bad thing, okay? But they have a very highly developed sixth sense. They're almost telepathic. They don't have to use words to communicate. And that's a different quality that I like. That maybe is lacking a little bit in places like North America. But I do think they have a special bond with nature in the sense that they react to its beauty a little bit more in depth than the ordinary foreigner or somebody like that. But then there are foreigners like me who do love, who appreciate a cherry blossom as much as they do, but they really, really react to it on an emotional level. So I think it's just a heightened sense of that compared to other countries, probably because they have so much beauty in this country. So they make use of it. Yeah.
And in terms of sort of historical figures, celebrities, artists, sort of Japanese people maybe you've come across, or artists' work that you admire, is there anyone that you would sort of really stands out for you?
Well, I could give you a boring cliche reply like Murasaki Shikibu or I don't know, Tokugawa or that. I'm not going to. I admire craftsmen, and I admire people who build very, very ornate fortifications. I love castles. I love castles in Europe, such as those in France and Germany, but I also love Japanese castles very much. And I very much admire those stonemasons, whoever they were. There are a number of them that made these beautiful castles all over. I've tried to visit a lot of Japanese castles in the past few years, and that combination of elegance of the design and the fact that it's a military fortification, that combination of strength and beauty is outstanding in the Japanese castle. It really is something. Because in France, you tend to have a sort of chateau féodal or a chateau renaissance. One is defensive and the other is ornamental. But the grace that the Japanese castle has in its sweeping roof and its strength is amazing combination.
Plus
really
it's
beautiful.
Functional at the same time.
Yes, it's very, very beautiful, and also it's there to defend the daimyo or the shogun that's residing in it.
Fantastic. How about a sort of historical figure? Who would you go for?
A Japanese one? I like the literature of Genji Monogatari, so I have to say Murasaki Shikibu. I know a lot of people say that, but I think Genji, although I haven't read it in Japanese, which apparently is very difficult to do even if you speak Japanese because it's in the old, like no theater, I would say that gives you, that work of literature, it gives you a lot of insight into Kyoto at that time, 1,000 years ago, and how a lot of these Japanese etiquettes and rituals developed over time, because they all come from somewhere, and it's normally from past centuries. So, and it's still, some of that is still here today. So it really gives you a strong understanding of the history of the country. So it's a wonderful work of literature. I highly recommend it if you have time to read it, which most people do if they're flying to Japan from Europe or America.